It's 3:30 call to order. City Council workshop for July 12th. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilwoman Campbell. Councilman Leon.
Here.
Councilwoman Darrow. Councilwoman Julian.
Here.
Councilman Stevens. Here. Vice Mayor Wilson.
Here.
Mayor Harris.
I'm present. Please stand for the invocation of the Pledge of Allegiance.
God our Father, we thank you for your grace, your mercy towards us. We thank you for your endless blessings. God, it's in this moment we ask that you continue to pour your blessings upon the residents of this great city, the leadership, and everyone that has something to do with it. Give us your knowledge, your wisdom, and your understanding as we prepare to conduct business that will affect your people. All these blessings we ask in your Son name, I do pray. Amen.
Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
City business. Clerk.
Yes, we're on item 4.1, discussion on non-budgeted special events marketing.
I believe Mr. Stevens, you wanted to start this one.
Sure. I think Councilman Leon actually called the workshop, and I graciously agreed to. So this workshop was birthed out of the conversation to essentially create some kind of streamlined process as it relates to non-budgeted events, non-budgeted city events. Is what we was looking to have conversation about. I would like to, what I proposed early at the last meeting is that we have conversation around events being promoted on city platforms, our Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, newsletters, etc., that is not city events, due to the confusion that has been created around getting the information out to the community. So essentially, I'm asking that we can have a conversation so that we can leave giving staff direction as to how we should, or what's allowed when it comes down to non-budgeted events. I don't have a problem with city council members or any department promoting their materials or our materials on city platforms. That's not my problem. My problem comes on when we're essentially utilizing the city seal or promoting the city events, promoting other entity events that are not city-sponsored events or led by certain council members. In the past, we've had competing events happening, i.e. the women's event in May, where there were multiple flyers going on. One is a city event and the other wasn't. And the list can go on. So I'm just asking that we can have a conversation so that we can create some kind of process that will essentially protect the brand of the city, but more so everything remains in a standard template of what we put out on our city platform.
Any questions on this?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Councilwoman.
So Councilman Stevens, thank you very much for birthing this idea. And so as we sit here and we talk about what we are seeking, I want to get with you, what outcomes are you seeking as we delve into this conversation?
Yeah, thank you, Councilwoman. Last year, we gave direction to the city manager, I believe it was last year or the year before, gave direction to the city manager to launch the,
Excuse me. Mr. Chair, you playing pity pat with the city attorney,
and she's participating.
and she's participating.
No, we're doing the color purple.
Who's whoopee and who's the other?
But
Welcome to the workshop.
He's rich.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. I believe it was last year or the year before, we gave direction to the city manager and his team to launch a marketing campaign to essentially tell the story of what's happening here in the city of Miami Gardens, but also create a process and what we put out, and that's how we birthed the slogan, "It's where Miami Gardens is where you want to be." So ideally, I would like that what is promoted on our city platforms is city-sponsored events and current council member events. Anything outside of that, I would ask that it is not used on our city platforms. We have a column that we identify as community partners. I would recommend that those things go through the community partners if it's not a city council member or a city event, as far as our different departments and et cetera.
Okay. I think my interpretation, and we're just on the table, we're not gonna continue to use the city platform as a weapon for campaigning and things like this for people that aren't a part of the city. So what needs to be done moving forward, and our direction to the attorney and to the city manager, and if I'm understanding it right, is that there are certain people that are part of different organizations, and they use our platforms to send their messages out, and that's not acceptable. If you're a city council person and you're having an event, or you're having activities, or you're having meetings and things like that, you're able to use the city platform. But if there's registered people that are registered as candidates and things like that, they should not be on our city Instagram or our city social media or on our flyers. Whether it's Live Healthy Miami Gardens, whether it's City of Miami Gardens. So is that my understanding of that?
Well, there's two parts. So I agree with that. That should be a standard that foul or known political candidates should not be utilizing city's resources to promote their agenda.
Then again, if you're a council person and you are up for re-election, but you're in your official capacity, then that is acceptable because you're in your capacity.
Correct. You're still
doing your
a
job
councilman.
currently.
Right, you're still a councilman. So that's two parts of that. I don't have an issue with that. I have an issue. I'm gonna give an example. I believe it was May, and Vice Mayor, correct me if I'm wrong, where you led a women's initiative with the Women's Commission that was appointed by the members of this council. And on that same day, a council member was a part, she was a guest speaker at a women's event. There was confusion as to why we have two different women's events happening. But the reality of it is that we only had one going on, but we were promoting, somehow the residents got the information on both events. That is what I'm saying. So just because we council members are guest speakers at a third party event, that don't make the city social media pages for promotion. That's not a city event. So just because I'm participating with ABC organization as a guest speaker, I don't promote that on our city platform. That's my individual platform because it's not city. So that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, and the question I have is, was the flyer created by the city?
Oh,
And the reason why I'm saying that is because why are we promoting anyone else's flyer? If it's not created by the city, under the city's protocol, it should never be on our page. And so I think that that's also an issue because if it doesn't go through the clearinghouse, then the protocols that we establish for the seal placement, for the names, for the titles, Because once again, as I said, you call someone honorable, or they call themselves vice mayor, and they no longer hold the office. And that would only be able to be validated by the city officials that are currently aware of those kinds of things. You follow me?
Mr. Manager, can we have Tamara to come up to explain how the process works? Yes, ma'am. Ma'am. For Ms. Wiley. I'm sorry.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. So to answer the Vice Mayor's question, the current process, all flyers that are promoted on the city's website or on social media pages are not created by city staff. However, it does have to go through an approval process if the seal is on it. So that approval process currently per the protocol manual is that it's approved by the manager and the attorney.
And those that don't have our seal on it,
They go into community partners if a council person asks us to promote it.
And
I think that's the issue.
And, well, if I may, Mr. Mayor, I think that's okay. I think that's the purpose of community partners. If the messaging is in line with this governing body, then I don't see the problem of promoting it as a community partner. The issue is to the point with the seal, when we're putting the seal on it and there's no approval. So we do have an approval process now where it goes through the city attorney and it goes through the city manager to just make sure it's in line. But if it has the city, but to that point, if it's not in the community partner portion, then.
Here's where I'm concerned, right? I think that in some ways there may be the possibility for an abuse of someone's position should they promote another candidate that is running for office during an elective time, as if that individual, is either still part of the status or is still part of the city's administration. And I think that there has to be some degree of stopping, where we put a halt to it, or we have some parameters that govern how that needs to be managed. Because, as I said, I've had residents to come to me under total confusion about the way information was promoted, and they were unaware that the person that was promoting it was no longer in office. And I'm not here to say, well, why were they unaware or not, but I am here to say that why didn't we catch that? And we've got to be able to be a little bit more diligent, because it is a brand that could easily be smeared by lack of clarity, especially when it appears on our platform.
Okay, so I'm okay with it, Mr. Man. I'm okay with the community partners because that lets us provide our chairman, current city elected officials that are having events that aren't a part of the city, but it still affects our residents, things like that. So that part I'm okay with that part. To the vice mayor's point, what we have to do, like I said before, we're not going to use our social media and our platform to promote people that are registered running for office, whether it's a post, whether it's a picture, anything like that. So if we need to come up with something to make sure that we're aware of everyone who is actually running for office right now, who's registered candidates, and make sure that they're not in our promotional criteria. Moving forward.
but not just those that are running office, but individuals that put that information on that hasn't gotten approved from that city.
Yeah, that's a big issue.
So,
We've
yeah.
seen that happen, but I wanna add furthermore to what each and every one of you have said. In addition to that, we've seen in the past the charging of fees for non-budgeted city events, and the city seal will go on it, right? And so you have a particular council member who will have a city event, and then they're charging the residents $15, $20 in partnership with a non-for-profit for the residents to attend. That also creates chaos, and I think that that's an abuse of our brand, it's an abuse of our city seal. So we should also put parameters in place to stop that?
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead.
I believe, there is, and I'm gonna ask the manager, because I remember an experience where, the usage of the city seal was not authorized, and code or a department notified that individual.
That's correct, Mr. Mayor. We do have in our code that if someone violates the use of the seal, we write them a letter, basically a letter of reprimand, and encouraging them not to do it again. If not, we can take further steps.
Right, but what I'm saying is that, for instance, you have a non-for-profit that's having an event at the Betty T. Ferguson Center, and they partnered up with a council member, and on the flyer, it has a city seal, and it says, in order to attend, you have to pay $25. Why are we charging for city events that are not budgeted?
Mr. Mayor, Councilwoman, now I understand what you're saying. When those things happen, believe it or not, that's not money that is being cut from the city. It's actually being cut for the organization.
Precisely, so we don't know where the funds are going,
That's
and
correct.
there's no control.
That's
So
correct.
what are we doing here? But we have the city seal on it.
Right.
That right there is a problem.
I agree
We're
with you.
paying
I agree with you on
fees
that.
to the residents, we're charging them a fee, and none of us here, nobody up here has any idea as to what is going on.
And Mr. Mayor, may I further the conversation? In some cases, and Councilwoman Jordan is correct, in some cases, remember that in some cases, we, the city, we're allowing folks to use those facilities for free. Then on top of that, that group may have had the use given to them by a council member. That use is now for free, and then they're profiting by charging at the door. When we don't, we the city, we don't charge for events when we put on those types of events. So that's going a step further, that we are allowing someone to use the facility for free, but yet we're charging them at the door to charge, they're charging patrons coming to that event.
So how do we assure that this,
Place that automatically stop that.
Yeah, the reseal.
Right.
hold on. How do we assure that this doesn't happen? So that's my.
I think what we could do is this. Because it's done through a council member, and I'm not trying to put my council members on the spot, I'm not. But it's done through a council member that they allow that, they use one of their freebies, if you will, for that organization to use the facility. That organization then charges to use that facility. What we need to make sure is that if we are going to continue to give away our facilities in that manner, then we need to have agreements put in place that they cannot charge patrons to come to that event that's happening in the city if we are giving it to them for free. Now, on the flip side of that, from a business standpoint, if we are going to inform folks that this event is a paid event, and they know that going into the event, then we should share in some of that profit.
Can it become a part of the form that they complete, the registration for the use of the facility, that whether or not a fee will be charged for admission or anything, so that, regardless if we come to them for free, or if a council person sponsors it, or co-sponsors it, if any fees are charged, we ought to be able to know that on the form, on the outset.
Absolutely. Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
That's correct, Vice Mayor. But the problem is that has not been happening. And then what happens is, you as a council member or a staff person or a manager or someone will show up, and when it's time to walk in the door, we're walking in the door for free, and everybody else is walking in the door and they have to pay.
So is this something that we can perhaps, it may be tedious, but perhaps bring before the board? Because if you're telling us that this is something that was essentially in place but has not been happening, then how do we set parameters to have control over this? Well, what are your recommendations?
I think, number one, off the top of my head, if we're going to allow folks to charge coming into our facility, once someone gets the facility for free, either we share in their revenue, one, or we don't allow it at all. So if you get it for free, you shouldn't charge.
I understand that part, but who's going to do the enforcement?
We would have to write that up in the agreement. I think I would have to work with the city attorney to put some language together. So going forward, we will be able to understand some of that, but
I'm not gonna be I'm just not about being in the business of policing council members, but what you can do is police yourselves in your protocol manual. So what I suggest you do, because we already have a process where we get these forms that are supposed to be filled out, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes, as you said, it's not enough information. So maybe what we need to do when we're getting the information from council members is include in that form if there is a fee being charged, and if so, then it comes to council.
Okay, let's go ahead.
Hold on. Yeah. Okay.
Well, I don't think it's necessarily policing the council members. This is for all facility usage. Whether it comes through whether the request comes through the council member or an administrator on the staff, there ought to be a standard in place that this is what you're going to do. I mean, if you're gonna use this facility, this is how it happens. However, when we're preparing this procedure, I want us to keep in mind non-for-profit organizations. I don't want this because a lot of times we do provide space to non-for-profit organizations that's offering services to the community, and they're not, and we're waiving the fee so that they can create benefits. To receive benefits to distribute and do the services in the community. So if this is a legitimate non-for-profit organization that can be verified on some bids or have the necessary paperwork, they shouldn't be subject, in my opinion, to this procedure that we're putting in place that they can't charge for this. Because a lot of times non-for-profit organizations do utilize our community centers for fundraising events so that they can continue doing their services. So I do want us to keep that in mind.
Right, and I'm not suggesting that we ban it, what I'm saying is if they are gonna charge, that it come to you all for approval. Because we don't know what bona fide nonprofit, but y'all generally have more idea. And if it is the fee being charged, that you all have to say it's okay for the fee to be charged.
So I agree with that.
So we'll check.
It's on the, change that form to read that, and then it has to come back before us.
But may I also say something else? You know, like, when council members have come in, such as myself,
I can't hear you, button.
I said, when you are new coming on board, there was a lot of legislation, rules, regulations, bylaws that you're not readily familiar with. However, what keeps you in line is in fact the process. So there should never ever be an opportunity for me as a new or existing experienced council person to authorize somebody to be compensated the free usage of the facility, and I don't sign something that acknowledges the fact that one, no fees will be charged. Two, this, that, and the other. And that way, it eliminates there being any ambiguity or lack of knowledge before something like this should ever happen. There needs to be some type of,
I don't know if I would want to sign off on that. That is.
yeah, well, I think that you should, because here's the deal. The intention of some folks that sometimes it's a deliberate effort to circumvent the process. Now, if you're gonna sign off to allow somebody to use it and you don't have any ill intentions, what's the problem, America? But if it's no problem, then you sign it and you move on. But you have too many ways in which people will say, well, you know, I was having a fundraiser and we didn't collect at the door, but we collected in advance. Someone shows up the day of, and then they say, well, since you didn't pay in advance, but you can now pay at the door, it's okay, we'll accept your check. So then what happens there? So you have to be able to have a catch-all in some ways to be able to eliminate the abuse of this situation.
So where are we now? Looking at the form that's going to be signed off on or approved by? That's what we discussed?
Right, so there is, if I'm not mistaken, and our staff can correct me, there is a process that our legislative analysts have to submit when we're waiting or requesting. So as city staff is going to now go back and make some amendments to address the issue that was raised by Councilwoman Julie and the rest of us.
And then as far as the city local,
Right, so non-city events will not be promoted on city platforms.
Okay.
Unless it's through the community partners corner that has been created. And then we want to make sure that if the usage of the city seal is not going through the approval process, that we're actually enforcing the violation of not getting the approval of the usage of the city seal. That addresses my concerns that I originally.
I still have a concern.
go ahead.
Okay. The use of titles. I think that whenever we have a flight, that the appropriate title and tense ought to be used. If someone is the honorable, if they are a former the honorable, it needs to state that. It should not indicate or be printed in a manner that allows us to believe or allows a reader to believe that that person continues to hold office, because they don't. They don't hold office in the city any longer. So when they're put up there as the honorable, that's another way that people get confused. All right?
Have an attorney, how do we go about, is it possible to even do that?
Well, she's speaking specifically about promotional materials, and yes, it is possible that if we know a person is no longer in that office or is not honorable, because in order to be honorable, you have to have either an office or some kind of office. We can control that and say, hey, we can do that. I don't have that.
But social media stuff, we can't.
We don't control their private, we don't control people's private pages, but on our stuff, we control.
Right.
I think it's just a matter of working with the public affairs department through the city manager to make sure that we are reading these flyer requests that are coming in, making sure that we adhere to everything that was just said as it relates to titles of former elected officials and the painting of an illusion that they are still elected.
And then, Mr. Mayor, so a couple of things I just want to reiterate to make sure that we're able to, for our community corner that you use, that we want to be able to still current elected officials that are outside the city, county commissioners, state representatives, that still goes through the process of the community corner, that we can advertise those events, and sometimes they partner with us. And to your point with organizations, I think part of the attachment should also be, if to the councilman's point, they're a legit charitable organization, that we need to have an attachment of their 501c3 should be submitted as we move forward if we're going to give them this location. For instance, we just had the mayor's ball, and if we move the mayor's ball to one of our properties, which is a fundraiser, we will be charging to get in, but we know that that's a legitimate organization. So if we can create something on the check sheet, if we're going to charge, showing that this is a legitimate 501c3 organization, that document would be provided by the analyst or whatever. If our legislative analyst is doing the booking at that time, that document should be uploaded into our system so that we understand that.
Let's make sure we do our due diligence when we entertaining these organizations. I'm good. Any other questions?
My heart runs. Council.
I just want to thank my colleagues for the participating in this conversation.
Very much in your conversation.
So we good, Mr. Manager, you guys okay with the instructions?
We're good.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, show this meeting adjourned.